So I want to show you something. You probably already know that we have in synthesizers like Serum 2 or Serum in general, these warp modes here, these so-called warp modes. And this influences how the oscillator is played back. At the moment here we have a saw oscillator and we can change the wavetable position here to get a different waveform. But we can also use a warp mode here, like something like bend plus. And we can bend these waveforms then, or these wave cycles, even though it's not inside of the wavetable itself. So the idea behind is that when you have like a wavetable and you have always the same waveforms inside of this wavetable, you can only move from the left to the right through the wavetable, and that's basically it. And to bring in a bit more variety to the waveforms, we have like these bend modes, and then you can influence how the oscillator looks like and also how the oscillator sounds like. So this is the idea behind it. We have a lot of different warp modes here, also tube distortion, and it bends and twists the oscillator waveform. So this is the idea. And we have also something like this inside of Vital, of course. In most wavetable synthesizers you have this, because it's wavetable synthesizers are basically, for me at least, just small little samplers, and you have like short samples in there, and you loop small little cycles in the sample. And to bring in more variety, we have like these warp modes. It's basically like something from the 90s, because we had no memory back then. Nowadays we have all the memory in the world, but we still use it for some reason, I guess because of the limitations, and people like the limitations. So here in Vital we have the same thing. It's called warp mode. We can switch from vocode to form and scale to harmonic stretch, for instance. And you can see here we can change the saw waveform to a sine, and then to something that looks like this, like an comp. I don't know. At least it produces a lot of different overtones. And we never changed actually here the waveform itself. We just changed how the lookup table is read by the oscillator, and we introduced with this a lot of different sound variety. And the interesting thing is you can actually sample this. So when we change here the oscillator in the editor to something like a ramp, which means a line going from -1 to +1 here, it looks like a ramp. And then we can apply these kind of warp modes to this ramp, and we can see what's happening. And we can also resample this here with the right click, resynthesize this into a wavetable. And then we can export these wavetables here, export waveform. And you get like a whole directory of these kind of warp modes here as a wavetable. And we can reuse this inside of Bitwig in the grid, of course. There's also something like these warp modes inside of Zebra 3 or Zebra in general. And here it's called, I think, Oscillator FX. You go to the oscillator pane here, and then you have like FX1, FX2, and you can select your different modes. And all of these functions do something different to the waveform, to the oscillator, how the waveform is played back. Very interesting. And it brings in a lot of different sounds. So inside of the grid, we can kind of fake this or replicate this. So here we have a very basic setup. We have a sine oscillator and an amplitude envelope and an audio out. And inside of the oscillator here, we have a pre-chord, so-called pre-chord. So we can receive here MIDI notes from the keyboard or from the piano roll. And then we generate internally a phase signal, and this phase signal is just a ramp going from 0 to +1. And this ramp signal then is used as a lookup table read signal. So it goes from 0 to 1 and read then here the first index, the second index, the third index, and so on. So if you go from 0 here to, I don't know what this is, +1, it looks like a ramp. And we can just switch here this oscillator to 0 to 1, the ratio to 0 to 1, which means this pre-chord is now disabled and we can't play the oscillator. We have to give the oscillator some kind of ramp signal. So we create one by using here a phaser, so-called phaser device or module. And this one here also has a pre-chord and it generates a ramp signal. And you can see this here inside of the oscilloscope, pretty clear. Going from 0 to 1. And when we change the pitch, of course, here on the keyboard, you can see the ramp signal changes because it wants to read the lookup table much faster because we have a higher pitch. And here it reads the oscillator lookup table very slowly because we have a lower pitch. So this is the idea, right? Going from 0 to 1. And then we feed this here into the sine oscillator by 100% into the phase input, PM input. And then we can play the oscillator exactly like before. We have to probably use this one here. So very basic, and it works exactly like before. But now we have externalized this kind of ramp signal, which means we can influence this ramp signal. We can do all kinds of things to this ramp signal and influence how the oscillator lookup table is read by the oscillator itself, and then influence how the oscillator sounds like. And to demonstrate this, we just apply here a very basic function, let's say this bend module here from the phase category. So we can bend this kind of ramp signal, and it influences how the oscillator shape looks like. Instead of a sine, we have like this shape. So this is a sine wave, and we can bend it. This is the idea. So just by applying basically these two devices here to the sine oscillator, we give the sine oscillator more features. Instead of just having skew and fold, we have now also bend. Or I don't know, something else here. What else there is? Pinch. Let's try this one. It also looks a bit different. And you can imagine when we modulate basically the bend module, and when we modulate the pinch module, and when we modulate the skew and fold and so on, we get a lot of different sounds out of the sine oscillator that only is, or the only purpose is actually to play a sine wave form. And we get more sounds out of it, which is, in my opinion, pretty interesting. Because you don't need to use wavetables all the time. You can just use a sine oscillator and twist and bend it in all kinds of different directions. So this is here something you can do pretty quickly. What we also can do is we can try to bring in some audio effects. So let's say what I sometimes do is use a chorus. The chorus here is an audio effect, which means it doesn't work between 0 and 1. It actually works between -1 and +1, because this is usually how audio signals look like. So when we hook this up here, something happens to the signal, but you can see the phase signal also change it. It goes to the negative range. It's not between 0 and 1 anymore. It's like a bipolar signal now, okay? So it's not a big problem. It still works. So it still works, but it's probably not correct. So what we can do about this is we can use some converters. We can convert this into this ramp signal, which is a unipolar signal, into a bipolar signal, and then we go from this into the chorus, which is a bipolar audio effect, and then we use a bipolar converter or bipolar to unipolar converter to go back into the 0 to +1 unipolar range. But you can see here some of the signals go below 0, which is not 100% correct, but it still works. It's much better than before, probably. Okay, so now that we have this phase signal here, this ramp signal inside of the kind of audio domain or audio range, we can apply all kinds of different audio effects. We can say we want to have a low pass on that. Something like this. So we can filter the oscillator shape before we actually play it. It sounds like this. So it sounds a bit like Unison in a way. I mean, it's probably how Unison is made internally, but you can imagine you can create kind of Unison without using the Wavetable oscillator, which is the only oscillator in Bitwig which has Unison. You don't need to use voice stacking. You can just use a chorus device here, a stereo effect on the phase signal, on the ramp signal, to create some kind of Unison output on the sine oscillator without creating voices, without creating stacking, without using the Wavetable oscillator, and it kind of just works. And you can also apply here low pass and high pass. Sorry. High pass, just to filter out here certain things. So with this we have already more knobs we can modulate over time, and we can influence how the sine oscillator sounds like without using a wavetable oscillator and just having a static wavetable, and where you go just from 0 to 127 or how many tables or how many indexes there are in this wavetable. Yeah, we can probably also switch this here to a polyphonic grid, and then put here some reverb on that. Let me see how this sounds. Okay, that's okay. So we can use audio effects here by just turning the unipolar signal into a bipolar signal, then applying all kinds of audio effects, and then bringing this back here into the unipolar range. So this is an idea, in my opinion, very nice. Okay, then we can do something like make sure we have this normalized, right? You can see here the phase signal is not always between 0 and 1, so you can apply maybe what's the name, level scaler, a level scaler here, and say go only from 0 to, oh, that's wrong, value scale, that's what we need, 0 to 100%. And then you can influence between where these lines are. This is an idea. You can also try to use here this audio signal or this phase signal inside of the audio domain, and we use a follower. So we follow the signal and we divide this audio signal by this follower output, which kind of normalizes here the signal. So when we go very low, right, instead of having here this kind of situation where we have like a small little movement between, I don't know, 0.5 and 0.6, we can kind of normalize this. So it's between 0 and 1 again. So we stretch out the signal, we normalize the signal, so it's always filling out here everything between 0 and 1, and it gives you a different outcome. Let's see how this sounds. kind of works. So yeah, this is also an idea. And of course, we can do something like, let's delete all of that and use a wavetable LFO. So I said earlier that I exported all of these kind of math functions here from Vital. So we have here bend, phase disperse, maybe you can use this, drag this into the wavetable LFO. And then we switch the wavetable LFO to hold. And we need to drive this here with the PM input by 100%. So the phaser goes into the wavetable LFO, looks up here the position inside of the wavetable, and then we use this as a phase signal to drive actually the sine oscillator. So you have the same problem. As you can see here, it's not filling out the space between 0 and 1, so maybe we can do the same trick. We convert this. There's probably a better way of doing this. So we convert this to bipolar signal and then back to a unipolar signal. And we divide this by the follower output. Something like this. And then it gives us maybe a much better signal range. Yeah, something like this. 50% should be, yeah, the original sine partial. Kind of. So all I want to say is you can twist the sine oscillator in all kinds of different shapes and forms and get some variety out of it. We can also mix and match this, right? So we have here a normalizer. We keep this normalizer. We have the wavetable LFO here, and maybe we combine this with a pinch. So this is what I showed earlier. And then we mix this together, something like this. And then here we have the normalizer that keeps, you know, everything between 0 and 1. And we can influence how much the wavetable LFO influences the phase and how much the pinch influences the waveform. And then we can play around with a lot of different knobs here and modulators in all kinds of different directions. And then of course maybe a chorus. The chorus needs to go into, let's say, maybe here. Let's see how this sounds. At the end, we want to make some kind of low pass. Something like this. Okay, and then we use here Valhalla on that, a bit of reverb. And we can create some kind of pad sounds with this. Maybe use a different feature here. Let's use pulse. Or maybe, what's a spectral filter? No, that's not interesting. Smear, maybe. Let's use smear. So we use a random LFO, this one here, and we modulate the position. Or maybe we use a cable for that. I feel like this. Use the second one for the low pass. Cool. Okay, I need the amplifier here. And yeah, you can see it's just still only one sine oscillator here, a very basic synthesizer setup. But in front we influence how this sine oscillator is played back internally just by making here a lot of fuss on the phase signal itself. And yeah, if you just disconnect this and use here 1:1 as a ratio, it's just a sine oscillator. That switches back to voices, to 8 voices, 10 voices. Yeah, these are just a few notes playing together, and because every note or every voice gets a different seed here from these random LFOs, you have like on every voice different movements. So in my opinion, just much better than just using one wavetable LFO or one wavetable oscillator, and then you move just back and forth inside of the wavetable, and it's always the same thing, right? You want to have different movement in different places, and you can see here it's moving all over the place, and this is like a nice setup here to influence the phase. It's just an example, and you can do this in all kinds of different combinations. It's not like you need to do this exactly like I did here. Maybe this is here anyway, not needed. But yeah, it's not super complicated, and you get different sounds out of it. So this is my idea I want to show you, because I just exported all of these waveforms or warp modes from Vital, and I want to share this of course with you on my GitHub, so you can download this and try it out for yourself. Anyway, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you next time.